guy has potential. Right. So one coming over from the Ravens to the Buffalo Bills in recent history that at least had success for a season.
Yeah.
Tyrod Taylor.
Right.
It's a guy that came over, never had a full opportunity as a starter. The Bills gave him that chance. It worked out well.
Got to their first playoff in 20 years or something like that?
Probably the most exciting year of football for Buffalo fans in recent memory. Right. I mean, as far as I can tell, again, I follow them closely, even though I'm a Dolphins fan. Hometown guy, watch the Bills, follow the Bills, and it was exciting. I remember Kyle Williams with his kids in the locker room, everyone's screaming. That was exciting. That was brought to the Buffalo Bills by bringing in a guy, taking a shot on someone who hadn't yet had that opportunity, right? So for every Tyrod Taylor success story for that one year before he was wrangled out of town, you have your Dante Culpeppers, the guy that Miami brought in, never
big money contract.
Didn't work out at all. Yeah. Your Case Keenums, your Sam Bradfords, these guys that you bring in that never quite turned it on the way you thought they would.
Nick Foles,
another great example. Now, that one was through injury, so they've got some interesting, because then our mustachioed hero, Uncle Rico himself, Gardner Minshew, we're going to see what happens in Jacksonville this year.
Nick Foles is interesting because it's kind of happened with him twice. Because he was in Philadelphia before, and he played really well. He had that season where he had 20-something touchdowns, only 2 interceptions. And then gets traded to St. Louis at the time, and kind of poops to bed there, even though Jeff Fisher was he's not a good head coach. Goes back to Philly, becomes the Philly hero, wins a Super Bowl, and then the year after that wins a playoff game, and then goes to Jacksonville, and he's hurt. First game of the season, he breaks his collarbone, but then even when he came back, he still kind of looks shaky. So he's an interesting one.
Very interesting, especially because he's so highly paid now.
Right.
A guy that's been paid a bunch of money to go and be the guy for, by the way, a team that was built for success.
Yeah.
And if we're talking the last few years, everyone wants to talk about Cleveland because they put this roster together of studs that, kind of flailed out, didn't quite do what they were supposed to do. Let's talk about, Jacksonville. First, it's a team that had all the potential in the world, that defense. And, I thought they're bringing in a great game manager with Foles and still having trouble piecing it together.
Yeah.
So very interesting, man.
With all that being said, so you laid out your mottos there, and excellent job with that. Let's go through these teams. Let's take a look at these teams, both AFC and NFC, that need quarterbacks, and kind of discuss what model we feel like they're going to take. You know what I'm saying? So, we can start anywhere that you want to start at. We want to start right at the top, Cincinnati. First, they got the first pick of the draft. Obviously, the player that's been linked to them almost since, the middle of the college football season has been Joe Burrow, who had a phenomenal all-time, probably the greatest season that any single player could ever produce at a quarterback position in college. And he's a Southern Ohio kid, and he's pretty much he's going to the Bengals at this point. So are they going to lean on the part where they just play him right away, or do you think that maybe they sit him a year behind potentially Andy Dalton, or maybe another veteran quarterback that they bring in if they decide to move on from Dalton?
I think if it's me, all right, I'm a big fan of option 2, right? The one that I talked about where it's, you draft the quarterback, but you let him sit behind a capable starter. Okay, people forget that Andy Dalton had a really good run there. He is a winning quarterback, right? He has a better winning percentage than a lot of quarterbacks that they are talking about being Hall of Fame caliber quarterbacks. There's a lot of people out there that say Eli Manning is a Hall of Fame quarterback. I am not in that camp. Now, he did win 2 Super Bowls. Andy Dalton did not have that same type of playoff success, but if we're talking regular season where you are playing most of your games as an NFL player, Andy Dalton has had a great career by most measured standards, right?
Multiple playoff appearances and multiple Pro Bowls, and he's had a very good career.
For the Cincinnati Bengals, I might add, that do not have, believe it or not, an indoor facility in northern Ohio. Or is it northern Ohio? It's northern U.S., right? Is it northern Ohio? Where's Cincinnati?
Cold.
It's cold. Either way, it's cold.
In the cold part of the United States.
It's in the cold part of Ohio. That's the the cold part. So no indoor facility. He did very well for himself there. So again, if it's me, if I'm their GM, okay, I am drafting Burrow. I think it's a great choice, especially with Tua's injury. It helps kind of make that decision a lot easier. I think, there'd be all kinds of outrage if Burrow didn't go to them. And I say you keep Dalton there for a year as a mentor to let him play behind. What do I think Cincinnati's going to do? Who, let's face it, history of maybe some questionable decision making in Cincinnati, I think that Andy Dalton is going to move on, and they are going to move him somewhere else and let Burrow take the reins day one.
Yeah. I agree with you. I'm thinking that Joe Burrow is going to be a Cincinnati Bengal. And I think they want to get him under there as soon as possible. Because it seems like the model that a lot of teams are taking nowadays is to take a quarterback early in the draft, play him as early as possible, and hope that he's able to have some level of success where you're able to build the rest of your roster out while that quarterback is on that cap-friendly deal. Because once a quarterback becomes elite, they're going to take up majority of your cap room when you have to sign him to that second deal. Like Patrick Mahomes, they're pretty much just going to hand him a check and say, how much do you want? And then that's going to kind of deplete the rest of the team from that day after that because you're paying your quarterback so much more money. So I'm thinking the Bengals are going to draft Joe Burrow. They're going to hope that he's able to keep on fire and bring that success he had over in his last college football season over to the NFL, and then kind of build out the rest of the roster from there with receivers, offensive linemen, defensive linemen, cornerbacks, whatever that may need, and try to compete for a Super Bowl within that 5-year span that he's under his rookie contract. So I definitely agree with you on that one there. All right, so what about the next team moving on then? So we got Cincinnati done. We're both saying that they're drafting Joe Burrow, and then Andy Dalton's most likely going to be moved on from there. How do you feel about how about your boys, Miami Dolphins? What are you thinking?
Well, they're drafting early. They're drafting out of the 5 spot, despite their best efforts in putting together a team that would be drafting first. They were outsucked by several other teams. Brian Flores actually did a great job with a team that was not built for winning. Their last offseason was reminiscent of watching the movie Major League. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie.
Classic.
It's a classic. It's about my Cleveland Indians, and it's about that mean lady who came in, wanted to move the team, and wanted them to play so poorly that she was going to let the team out of a city contract and be able to move it. Mm-hmm. It kind of looked like that tanking for Tua was the real deal. What they didn't anticipate was that I think that they have a great coach down there in Brian Flores, who work some magic to a 5-11 season with a roster that was built to win maybe a game or two at best. So what do I think that they're going to do? Well, I think that's going to depend a little bit on what situation kind of falls to them. And by that, I mean, there is at the 5 spot, it'll be interesting to see if one of the teams ahead of them ends up either taking a quarterback themselves, or if somebody trades ahead of them to take a quarterback.
Right.
If I'm Miami, again, that's the fun part of this, right? That's the fun part for me, is pretending that I'm the GM. What do I do? I think I am perfectly content, okay, to allow someone, okay, we can talk about those teams in a little bit, somebody maybe trade into that Detroit spot at 3 and take Tua, okay? Because I'm afraid, right? And trust me when I tell you, I've been wrong a lot, but I'm afraid of that injury history, right? I am very afraid of that. That's a hip. That's ankles. I mean, that's everything. It's your mobility. It's your throwing motion. He has not made it, unless I'm mistaken, through an entire college season yet. So to hit the NFL, bigger, stronger, faster players coming after you that hit harder, I don't know how he makes it through an NFL season.
Yeah.
Right? And if you're drafting him at number 3 or at number 5, that's a big investment to have completely fall apart. You can't miss on those first rounders. So if I'm Miami, if I'm the GM, I'm allowing somebody to jump up in there and maybe scoop Tua out from under us, but I'm perfectly content taking Justin Herbert. I loved what I saw of him. His hair was flowing in the wind while he was throwing passes at the combine. He looked amazing out there. He's tall. He's everything you could ask for in a quarterback prospect. And the other thing that I'll say about Justin Herbert is that's one of the names that I heard of before this year.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's big for me. So we did hear, of course, a little bit about Tua towards the end of the season when he took over in the championship game. Looked amazing, right? When he took over for Hurts. Very cool story there. But prior to that, Herbert was the guy that was on the radar for a long time.
Yeah.
Before Burrow came out and was Joe Burrow, and before Tua came out and was Tua, right? So I think that Herbert is steady. He's a prototypical NFL quarterback, and I'm perfectly content taking him at 5 if I'm the Miami Dolphins.
I hear you on that one. And so what the reports I've been reading and listening to is that the Miami Dolphins is locked in on Tua. Like that's their guy. They're planning on doing whatever they can to go and get him. And I'm feeling like it's going to be one of those scenarios where they're going to go ahead and have to make a trade. And it's looking like that the number 3 spot is the trade spot if a team wants to move and go get basically Tua, because I don't think Joe Burrow is going to be there. Also, another scenario as well would be number 2 at Washington, because we don't know what the Washington Redskins are going to do. Ron Rivera has not ruled out from drafting a quarterback. And you mentioned it earlier, before we started recording, you mentioned that Washington is one of those teams that have had multiple young quarterbacks on the roster at one time. So it wouldn't be no surprise there if they decided that, hey, man, we're going to go ahead and draft Tua because we like him that much of a prospect. Now, I think it's a little bit of a smokescreen there. I don't believe that they're interested in drafting a quarterback. I just think that they're saying that to try to build up a potential trade for somebody that wants to move up and, go and get their quarterback. If they can get like a crazy haul. But I'm thinking that Washington, they take Chase Young. They're going to take the best player in that draft there for him. But I think number 3 is that spot. Like, does Detroit potentially look into drafting Tua there? Do they want to move on from Matt Stafford? And I know we're going to talk about Detroit a little bit later. But I'm thinking that Miami is going to do everything in their power to go and draft Tua. I don't think that they would give up too much of a draft capital, though. I wouldn't think like if like Detroit was asking for like their 2 first rounders, I don't think they would do that. Like maybe like a first and a third, if they needed to move up and get them, I think they would potentially pull the trigger on that type of trade, like a first, third, and maybe a next year's third or something like that. But if the price is right, I think that they go and get Tua. If not, then I can see Miami taking Herbert. I've been seeing Herbert linked to Los Angeles a lot. So we kind of see there. It's going to be very interesting to see how that breaks down. But if I had to make my ultimate prediction, Tua is going to wind up Miami Dolphin when it's all said and done, when the draft process is over, in my opinion.
I could absolutely totally see that happening. And one of the interesting things, the only way that they could be beat to the punch on that is if we're looking at, if we're rounding out the top 4 or the top 5 picks, right? We got Cincinnati, Washington, Detroit, the New York Football Giants, and then my Miami Dolphins.
Right.
Okay. So in there, Washington, probably, right? I think I agree with your assessment. Smokescreen there, probably not looking at a quarterback. Right. Having just drafted Haskins, it's going to be interesting. Ron Rivera coming in, we don't know what he's going to want to do there, but I think they stick with Haskins. Right. Detroit, they could draft a quarterback. I think Matt Stafford's still only like 30, 31 years old. Right. So it's not like, and he was playing really good football before he got hurt last year. So I don't think that they're going to be looking for a quarterback there. And the Giants think that they may have found something in Daniel Jones, right? So
Danny Dimes.
Exactly, Danny Dimes. Who would have seen that coming? Not
Seriously.
Me. I would have been dead wrong in that. I was with everyone else laughing at Gettleman at that pick, but hey man, that's why these guys are paid the big bucks, and Danny Dimes might be a real thing moving forward. But looking at these teams, these are prime real estate spots to be able to trade back.
Yes.
For teams who are looking for a quarterback, right? They can jump into those spots, and then if you only move back maybe 3-4 spaces, you can still get one of those top defensive prospects. Your Simmons or your Okudas will still be there because these teams that are going to be trading up are the ones looking for a quarterback. So what a position to be in if you're Washington, Detroit, or the Giants. But I think I agree with you. Washington ends up taking Chase Young there, and the Dolphins will most likely end up with Tua. But I'll tell you what, had you told me at the beginning of last season that the Dolphins would have to trade up to get the QB that they wanted, I would have asked for a little bit of whatever you were smoking, because I would have not seen that coming, man.
Yeah, it was not a good start for your boys, man, especially that first game of the season.
We kept it close. I think it was 51-6 or something.
I mean, hey,
we kept it tight.
You only lost by 50+ points, so.
And I think we got worse week 2. That's all right. We're moving forward, Bryce. We're trusting the plan. We're moving.
I believe in Flores. He's going to have that team right. And I wouldn't be too scared off from the injury history with Tua. Like, I mean, actually, I understand your concern. Like, he, sustained some substantial injuries, like a hip injury and an ankle injury. That's kind of. But his medical records have been checking out so far. They're saying that everything's looking good, and he's an all-time talent, man. He's like an excellent prospect. Like, before the season began and all these injuries started happening, he was the number 1 prospect coming into this draft, and it wasn't for no reason. You know what I mean? Joe Burrow had the season that he had, and history is there. But Tua, I think he's kind of made to be a Miami Dolphins. Like, I just see him as a Dolphin. at this point, you know.
He'd look good in teal for sure.
You know?
He'd look good there.
He really would.
There's no doubt. If he was healthy, I'd be